The weather is about to change a ton over the next few days as we are going from record-breaking cold temperatures to a winter heat wave as we go into early next week, and there will also be a few more big storms as we go into next week that could bring some snow and maybe even the return of some severe weather. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 to 10 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country this morning, and things look a lot better for most of us across the lower 48. The only thing that doesn't look nice are the temperatures. It is very cold out there, in addition to some snow being on the ground in many areas. But really the biggest news today is that we have a little low pressure system that's spinning back over in the Rockies, bringing some light snowfall to areas like Colorado and as well as Utah. But that's going to be weakening out later today, and after that's gone, the only snow that we'll have left over is really going to be back over in the Northeast, and even then it's mostly just very light lake effect snow or some really coastal snow showers. Also back over in the Pacific Northwest, we have a large atmospheric river that is impacting areas really back over in Canada, but there's a little bit of that lingering into parts of Washington that'll bring some more rainfall as we go into this weekend. And before we go further into today's forecast, I do want to remind you, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. It is completely free to do, and we are now about 7,500 subscribers away from 1 million. I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. We do daily weather forecasts like this all the time. Now let's talk more about what's going to be happening over the next several days in terms of the temperatures. And right now we are dealing with a huge area of below average temperatures. Anywhere east of the Rockies right now, it's all below average. We have many areas as low as 40 degrees below average this morning, which is also leading to some record-breaking low temperatures. But that is all going to change as we go into the weekend and early next week. That cold air will start to weaken out as we go into Saturday afternoon and eventually into Sunday. It will still linger for areas down in the southeast and the Tennessee Valley, but overall we are going to start to see the temperatures increasing as we go into the weekend. And then by the time we go into early next week, we're going to have high pressure just dominating the entire United States. Basically, there's really not going to be a whole lot of rainfall during the very early portion of next week, and that's going to lead to all of this warm air coming out of the south, as a strong southerly wind will bring warm air. Many areas as much as 20 to 30 degrees above average, even back up into South Dakota. We could see some high temperatures up there in the 60s. I wouldn't even rule out 70s back over in parts of Nebraska and South Dakota on Monday. We are talking about the potential for record-breaking high temperatures as we go into Monday, and I mentioned it in our last forecast. Essentially, the weather is currently drunk. We're going from today having record-breaking low temperatures to perhaps Monday having record-breaking high temperatures. Eventually, as we go into Tuesday afternoon, the warm air is spreading across the entire lower 48. There will be very few areas that are below average, even by a degree, as we go into Tuesday afternoon. And then eventually, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, I think things will start to change a little bit. I do think we're going to get a shot of cold air or maybe even Arctic air as we go into the tail end of next week back over in parts of the Northeast, and that could feel basically as cold as areas like the Central and Northern Plains felt this week. So that'll be something to watch for as we get closer to next weekend, but it is too early to tell the exact intensity and as well as the scale of this Arctic air mass. And then eventually, as we go into early the following week, things become a lot more uncertain, but I do think areas like the Northern Plains and the Northeast will end up being a bit colder than average as we go into the very end of February and then eventually in early March. So this is what the temperatures look like out there this morning. If you're back over in Florida, be careful out there. There are falling iguanas today because of how cold it is. But as we eventually go into Saturday morning, that cold air will start to simmer down for the most part. Many areas starting to go a little bit higher in terms of the temperatures. Teens in single digits in the Midwest, and then below freezing temperatures only stretching down towards areas like Texas and also through the Dixie Alley. Eventually, as we go into Sunday and as well as into Monday, notice how all that cold air starts to go right back to where it belongs, which is back up in the Arctic and as well as in Canada. Eventually, as we go into Monday afternoon, this is where we're dealing with the potential for mid to upper 50s and even 60s across areas like the Central Plains. Could even have a few 70s back over in Kansas on Monday, which is actually crazy. And then back over in the Southeast, many areas above freezing. If you have any snow on the ground back over in Virginia or North Carolina, a lot of it will be melting by Sunday and Monday. And then eventually, as we go into Tuesday, this will likely end up being the warmest day of the week. I think temperatures could actually be a bit higher than what this is even showing here. I think we could have a few 60s, maybe even again a couple low 70s back over in parts of Nebraska and South Dakota, and then back over in the Central Plains, same story. And then if you're back over in Texas or Oklahoma, 70s and 80s across most of those areas on Tuesday. It's a complete flip over what we've been talking about here for the last few days, and then eventually that cold air starts to come back out of Canada as we get closer to the end of next week. Now, the weather's going to be changing a lot over the next several days, not just in terms of the temperatures, but also the amount of rain and snow that we're we're going to be seeing, and a lot of it has to do with our jet stream pattern. This is what it looks like right now. We don't really have any big features other than that big low pressure system that ended up bringing the winter storm here over the last couple of days to areas like the Central Plains and back through the mid-Atlantic, but really all of that is off the coast now. We don't really have any snow left over. The only thing that's remaining is all of that cold air. But eventually, as we go into this weekend and into early next week, there's really no defined systems here across the lower 48. However, there is one noticeable feature, and that's back over in Texas. We actually are going to have a shortwave trough on Sunday and Monday, and this is going to bring some flooding rainfall potential along the Gulf Coast, mainly from Texas all the way back through Mississippi and perhaps even into Florida as we go into the late weekend and early next week. That'll eventually weaken as it approaches the East Coast, and then eventually by Tuesday into Wednesday, we are dealing with mostly a zonal weather pattern, but there will be a little bit of curvature back up here in the Midwest and as well as into the Northeast, and this will bring the threat for some Alberta clippers, which are those little disturbances that come out of Canada and usually bring some rain on the south side, including maybe some isolated severe storms, and then also snow back on the northern side. And I do think we're going to get a few shots of snow by the middle and end of the week, and then eventually as we go into next weekend, we could be talking about a pretty large dip in the jet stream back along the East Coast, which could do a couple different things, one of which bringing maybe a large storm to areas like the Ohio Valley and back through the southeast, and then another thing being the Arctic blast potential, which could bring a lot of cold air to areas specifically back up in the northeast and also near Nova Scotia. So as we go into the weekend, we are anticipating high pressure to dominate most of the lower 48. The only areas dealing with rainfall will really be in the Pacific Northwest and also along the Gulf Coast, and that Gulf Coast disturbance really ramps up Sunday back over in southeast Texas and Louisiana, and then eventually as we go into early Monday, that'll continue to move towards Florida and Georgia, where some showers and thunderstorms will be possible. And you could think of this system as if it was a tropical depression. It's obviously not tropical, but it'll bring similar impacts when it comes to the rainfall. Eventually, as we go into Tuesday, we'll have some snow back over in the Northeast and a little Alberta clipper back over in the Midwest. Some light snow and rain. Again, nothing significant by any means. We're not talking really about a winter storm. Eventually, as we go into Wednesday, I do think a large-scale storm system will form sometime around Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday back over in the Ohio Valley and Southeast. I think this will be a mix of snow and also some showers and thunderstorms. The GFS model does not really have a very impressive storm system, though. It's just a large blob of rain and snow, so definitely not really anything too significant there. And then eventually, as we go into late Friday and Saturday, yet again, another Alberta clipper, and then eventually by the late weekend into early next week, the GFS model does have a larger storm system, but even then, again, not really anything that really stands out to me as if we are going to see anything like what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks when it comes to those big winter storms moving over the Rockies and then eventually moving through the Great Plains and along the East Coast. So in terms of total rainfall accumulation, we are anticipating around 1 to 3 inches of rain along the Gulf Coast, mainly from around Houston back into southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi. A few isolated locations, mainly in southern Louisiana, could be as high as 5 inches of rainfall. Obviously, this is not nearly as much as what we just saw in Kentucky over the last week or so. However, this is definitely still significant enough where low-lying areas could be impacted and also some low-lying roadways. So again, take it slow on the roadways if you do end up traveling. And then back over in like Florida in the southeast, we're talking really about minuscule amounts of rainfall, really anywhere from about 1/10 of an inch of rain up to maybe an inch or two if you're back over in southern Florida. And for those that are curious, these are the odds of seeing at least 1 inch of snowfall between now through the end of February. They are relatively low unless you're back over in the upper Midwest or in the Northeast, because look at this, we have like no chance basically in the central or southern plains or the southeast. This is really the first time I think in about 2 months or so that we've had no chance of any snow in areas like the central or southern plains or back through the southeast. So definitely something that's interesting here, but overall the chances are much higher if you're back over in the Northeast or back up into Canada, which again is all thanks to all these Alberta clippers that we're going to be seeing here over the next week or so. So this is going to be kind of the weather pattern that we're dealing with, but I think in the first week of March, we are going to have some sort of large storm come over the Rockies, and I think that will be the next storm that brings significant snowfall and as well as significant severe weather. And don't forget that we predicted the middle of February to be a very active time frame all the way back at the end of January. So again, I do think in terms of the long-term prediction, we are going to see some sort of big severe weather event or a winter storm in the first week or so of March. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and we'll keep you posted with the latest as severe weather season gets closer.